The time for convening, as prescribed by the Constitution of the State of Georgia, having arrived, the 2019 session of the Georgia Senate will come to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here today to our Senate chamber, and to all of our senators, congratulations on your election to the Senate. I also want to welcome all of your friends and family that could be with us here today. At this time, I would ask all unauthorized persons to exit the Senate chamber. It's now time for the morning devotional. Doorkeepers, please secure the doors. All members, please take your seats. I now recognize the senator from the 49th District to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excuse me, Mr. Secretary. Would address the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now to the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I noticed there was a little bit lighter participation on the Georgia pledge. Y'all have a seat. Everybody have a seat. Welcome. Welcome families. Welcome friends. Welcome moms and dads and sisters and brothers and cousins and aunts and uncles and the people that love you. You know, we often say that politics is a team sport. None of you guys got here on your own, nor did I. But fortunately, we have wives and mothers and husbands that support us and encourage us, and children that keep us humble. It's my great pleasure to introduce our chaplain of the day. He's a man of significant distinction and reputation throughout not just Atlanta, not just Georgia, but the nation. Mr. Rodney Bullard is Vice President of Corporate Responsibility at Chick-fil-A and Executive Director of the Chick-fil-A Foundation. Rodney leads the Chick-fil-A community engagement and philanthropic strategies. He's also Community Affairs and Executive Director for the Chick-fil-A Foundation. Before coming to Chick-fil-A, Rodney served as an Assistant United States Attorney prosecuting complex criminal cases. Hope you were showing mercy on him. Little mercy, he says, when appropriate. He prosecuted complex criminal cases, and for his service, the United States Attorney General presented Rodney with the Department of Justice Director's Award. Prior to this role, Rodney was selected as a White House Fellow, the nation's most prestigious public service fellowship. As a White House Fellow, Rodney was placed at the NASA facility, working directly with the NASA administrator. Rodney has previously served at the Pentagon as a congressional legislative liaison and the Office of the Secretary of the Air Force. Rodney is an alumnus of the United States Air Force Academy, Duke Law School, University of Georgia, Terry College of Business, and the Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program. He recently released his first book, Heroes Wanted: Why the World Needs You to Live Your Heart Out. I would ask you to give Rodney a warm Senate welcome. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Now we're going to try that one more time because I know you all are excited to be here. Good morning. Good morning. Senator Miller, thank you for that kind introduction. I am honored to be here. I am a son of Atlanta, a son of Georgia. My wife is also of Atlanta, and my son was born in D.C., but he will tell anybody that he is a Georgian. And so I am very pleased to be here. First of all, I will apologize. I am not here on a hunting mission, so I wore this blazer here today only because I ran out of the house because I was so excited to be here, and then I realized as I got down I-85 that my coat was on the other side, and so I appreciate that. But it is an honor to be here. Since 1777, this body has stood longer than his federal cousin. And this body has stood for the same opportunity, which is to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. And when I think about that, that is biblical. In fact, Proverbs 31, 8 and 9 says something very similar. It says that we are to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. We are to ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice. The opportunity of this session is the same as it was since 1777, to represent those. I think about what you all are about to embark upon in this latest edition. And I think about a story of a friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Gregory Ellison. He's professor of theology at the Emory School, the Candler School of Theology. And he tells a wonderful story. He says that when he was 6 years old, he had an Aunt Dot, and he loved Aunt Dot. And Aunt Dot had a PhD, and so he looked up to Aunt Dot because she was smart and erudite, and she would answer all of his questions. And so he said one day he went to Aunt Dot because he had a question that he thought would stump her. So he went to Aunt Dot and he said, Aunt Dot, I have a question for you. And she said, well, Greg, you're my favorite. This is Greg telling the story. You're my favorite, and so ask me anything. And so he says, Aunt Dot, it's a big question. And he says, just ask the question, Greg. And so he says, Aunt Dot, I want to know how you change the world. I want to know how you change the world. I see so much going on. I see so much difficulty, and I want to know how you change the world. And so Aunt Dot reared back because it was, in fact, a big question, a heavy question. A question from the mouth of a 6-year-old. And so she then thought about it, and she leaned in, and she said, Greg, I'll be honest, I don't know how to answer the question. But I can tell you this. I can tell you, you can always take care of the 3 feet around you. You can connect with those who are different than you. You can connect across the aisle. You can connect in ways within your 3 feet. You can smile at someone. You can be caring. Senator Miller, you can even offer mercy. And so I commend you to think about your 3 feet as you go about your daily work. Whether you are a senator in this chamber or not, we each have the opportunity to use our 3 feet. And your 3 feet as senators of this great state is longer than some others' 3 feet. Don't forget that. And so I commend you, and I ask that we close in prayer, at least my time in prayer. So if you would join me in prayer. Thank you, dear Lord, for the opportunity to serve. Thank you, dear Lord, for the opportunity to come together. We thank you, dear Lord, for this great state and for the leaders that have gathered here in this chamber. We ask, dear Lord, that you please give them wisdom, that you give them temperance, that you guide their hands and you guide their work. We ask, dear Lord, that you please keep us in your care individually and collectively. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Senator for first. I would now call on the Senator of the 1st to introduce our Doctor of the Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, could you cease all audible discussion and stand quietly as the Senator from the 1st introduces the Doctor of the Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. It is certainly my honor today to introduce the Doctor of the Day. I've known Dr. Kaufman for quite some time, since being here in the legislature, and he is board certified in internal medicine like I am. He earned his medical degree at the Morehouse School of Medicine, completed his residency in internal medicine at Emory University, and since 1989 he's been practicing internal medicine at the Kaufman Clinic with offices in Atlanta and Woodstock. He's a lifelong resident of Atlanta, where he resides with his wife and 19-year-old twins who are now at University of Georgia on the Hope Scholarship, I understand, so that's great. Enjoys golf, very involved with the Alzheimer's Association, Georgia chapter, and Atlanta Regional Board member. For 18 years, he served as chairman of the James A. Kaufman Golf Tournament, which has raised over $2.5 million for Alzheimer's Association. As an aside, it was Dr. Kaufman's father who started the medical first aid clinic here, along with Dr. Cooper here at the Capitol numerous years ago. We're very thankful for him. Dr. Kaufman at times fills in when there's no one here at the Capitol and has stayed many long hours along with us and keep the aid station open. But let me pause for a second. It's also very important to understand that as physicians, we're always educators. Certainly in your roles today, we're always educators. Dr. Kaufman is no less, educates medical students, and today he has a PA student from the Mercer School here, a PA student that's very near and dear to my family. Kathleen Matthews is my son's girlfriend, and as I said, very special to our family. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's quite an honor to be here. I was trying to, on my way here, I was trying to figure out how many times have I been down here. Well, this July I'll be in practice 30 years, which is hard to believe that it's flown by that. So I can remember coming down here as a kid with my dad, you know, spending that last night, spending all sorts of hours here, and you know, and going to midnight, and I'd be asleep on the couch in the first aid station. But it's such an honor, and you know, my father's passed away 18 years ago, and you know, I've always wanted to keep his legacy and come here on the first day, and you know, I know he's thrilled and everything is great. So it's quite an honor to be here, and I'm always available to help y'all in any way. And my office is right down the street, and Dr. Watson, you know, I know is here, but I'm always glad to help in any way. The other thing that I wanted to do is, you know, the Doctor of the Day, you know, we're here, but really the most important person is standing over there. She likes to hide behind everybody, but she's the nurse, Miss Julia Mack. So she's the most important person. She's here every day. So I'm very thankful for her, and I think she deserves a round of applause. As Dr. Watson said, I have twins at the University of Georgia, and I am very thankful for the Hope Scholarship. Thank y'all. Have a great session.
Thank you, Senator. Let me ask all senators to please take your seats at this time.
A lot of people in line.
Do you want to get out of here by now?
Yeah, it's true. Good point. Ask the pastor if he'll stick around.
Mr. Secretary, please read a communication from the Secretary of State.
From the Office of Secretary of State, I, Robin A. Crittenden, Secretary of State of the State of Georgia, do hereby certify that the attached 2 pages constitute a true and correct list of state senators in the General Assembly of Georgia in the 2018 general election held on November 6, 2018. all as the same appear on file and record in this office, in testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the seal of my office at the Capitol in the city of Atlanta this 14th day of December in the year of our Lord 2018, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 243rd. District 1, Ben Watson. District 2, Lester Jackson. District 3, William Ligon. District 4, Jack Hill. District 5, Sheikh Rahman. District 6, Jen Jordan. District 7, Tyler Harper. District 8, Ellis Black. District 9, PK Martin. District 10, Emmanuel Jones. District 11, Dean Burke. District 12, Freddie Powell Sims. District 13, Greg Kirk. District 14, Bruce Thompson. District 15, Ed Harbison. District 16, Marty Harbin. District 17, Brian Strickland. District 18, John F. Kennedy. District 19, Blake Tillery. District 20, Larry Walker. District 21, Brandon Beach. District 22, Harold Jones II. District 23, Jesse Stone. District 24, Lee Anderson. District 25, Burt Jones. District 26, David Lucas. District 27, Greg Dolezal. District 28, Matt Brass. District 29, Randy Robertson. District 30, Michael Dugan. District 31, Bill Heath. District 32, Kay Kirkpatrick. District 33, Michael Rett. District 34, Valencia Say. District 35, Donzell James. District 36, Nan Orrock. District 37, Lindsay Tippins. District 38, Horacina Tate. District 39, Nikema Williams. District 40, Sally Harrell. District 41, Steve Hinson. District 42, Elena Parent. District 43, Tanya Anderson. District 44, Gail Davenport. District 45, Renee Unterman. District 46, Bill Cowsert. District 47, Frank Ginn. District 48, Zara Karenchak. District 49, Cecil Butch Miller. District 50, John Wilkinson. District 51, Steve Gooch. District 52, Chuck Huffstetler. District 53, Jeff Mullis. District 54, Chuck Payne. District 55, Gloria Butler. District 56, John Albers. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We will now call the roll of senators-elect. The Secretary will call the roll. Signify your presence by voting the A switch. Call the roll. The next item of business will be the swearing in and seating of members. I recognize at this time the distinguished President Pro Tem for the purpose of introducing a Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. From time to time, we have a opportunity to introduce someone of significant distinction. Today is my great pleasure to introduce a man I know that I've known for a number of years, and I have seen him conduct himself in this chamber. I've seen him conduct himself in the general social setting. I've seen him conduct himself in a business setting. I know of very few men who I would hold in regard as I do Justice Charles Bethel. Justice Bethel graduated from Dalton High School in 1994. He attended University of Georgia Law School. He is a business person. He is an attorney. He is a friend to every senator in this chamber. We have known him as a friend. We've also known him as a father and a husband and a gentleman. Charlie Bethel has spent his life serving his fellow man. And as I've said about another gentleman in this building on many occasions, Justice Bethel has planted trees under which he will never enjoy the shade. And he has planted orchards from which he will never reap the fruit. He's a man with broad shoulders. He's a man with keen intellect. He's a man with impeccable integrity. It is my honor to introduce the senator from the 54th, former senator from the 54th, the Honorable Charlie Bethel.
We got lunch plans, folks. Mr. Pro Tem, thank you for your continual kindness that exceeds that even when you were seeking my vote. I aspire to be the person you introduced. Senators-elect of Georgia, congratulations. I am glad to be what I consider one of my homes, and it is great to see so many familiar faces, and what a testament to our representative form of government to see so many new faces. Welcome all and congratulations all. If you would please prepare yourself to take an oath. If you choose a sacred text, take it. If you do not either way, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do hereby solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of this state and of the United States, and on all questions and measures which may come before me, I will so conduct myself as will in my judgment be most conducive to the interests and prosperity of this state. I further swear or affirm that I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money due this state or due any political subdivision or authority thereof, that I am not the holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States or any other state, or any foreign state, which by law I am prohibited from holding, that I have been a resident of my district for the time required by the Constitution and laws of this state, that I am otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution and laws of Georgia. So help me God. Congratulations and Godspeed.
Congratulations, Senators. I want to extend my congratulations to each of you, all members. All members have been sworn in and will be seated without objection. Justice Bethel, on behalf of the entire Senate, we want to thank you for being with us today. We, depending on time constraints, Justice Bethel has indicated he would be available after we adjourn today up front here to have some photographs taken. We appreciate that, Mr. Justice, and that'll be available for you. We'll have a Senate photographer up here, and senators obviously come up first and have the picture with Justice Bethel made because he has a tight schedule as well. Our next order of business is the election of the President Pro Tem. I would ask that guests move off to the side at this point. Next business is the election of the President Pro Tem. I recognize the Majority Leader for a motion.
Mr. Secretary, I nominate the senator from the 49th.
The Majority Leader has moved that the senator from the 49th be elected President Pro Tem. Is there a second?
I second the
Minority Leader is
nomination.
recognized.
I second the nomination of the senator from 49th for the position of President Pro Tem of the Senate.
The motion has been seconded. Does the Majority Leader wish to speak? You can, either way.
Fellow members of the Senate, just over a year ago, we asked the senator from the 49th to step up as the pro tem of our body. He did so by representing us all extremely well. What I ask is for y'all to join me in voting for the first full term of the senator from Gainesville to be the pro tem of our Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any other nominations? I recognize the Majority Leader.
I move that the nominations be closed.
The Majority Leader has moved that the nominations be closed. Is there objection? Hearing none, the nominations are closed, and I declare the senator from the 49th duly elected President Pro Tem. At this time, I'd ask the following members to serve as a committee of escort to escort the newly elected President Pro Tem to the rostrum. The committee should proceed to the back of the chamber at this time. The following members are appointed as the committee of escort: the Majority Leader, Senator from the 30th, the Minority Leader, Senator from the 41st, the Dean of the Senate, Senator from the 4th, and the Senator from the 15th. If you all will proceed to the back of the chamber at this point. Mr. Doorkeeper. Mr. Doorkeeper, please allow the distinguished senator from the 49th entrance to the chamber. The escort committee will escort the President Pro Tem to the rostrum.
Speaking from here. The next order of business is the election of the Secretary of the Senate. At this time, I would like to ask Secretary Cook to depart the chamber. Don't just go to the back like I did. I mean, I was in here. I could hear what y'all were saying. At this time, I'd recognize the majority leader for the purpose of making a nomination.
Mr. President, I nominate David Cook to be our Secretary of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. At this time, I recognize the senator from the 41st for the purpose, minority leader for the purpose of seconding a nomination.
Mr. President, I rise to second the nomination of David Cook as Secretary of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I recognize the majority leader.
Mr. President, I ask that nominations be closed and that the Deputy Secretary cast a unanimous vote of the Senate for David Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. The majority leader has moved that the nominations be closed and the Deputy Secretary cast a unanimous vote of the Senate for David Cook. Is there objection? The chair hearing none, the nominations are closed. I declare David Cook duly elected Secretary of the Senate. Mr. Doorkeeper, please bring in the Secretary. Mr. Doorkeeper, bring the Secretary to the chamber. We've granted him that privilege, and we'd like for you to escort him to the rostrum. Mr. Secretary, are you prepared to take the oath of office? I am, sir. If you would repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will discharge my duties faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. Secretary. The next order of business is the election of the Sergeant at Arms. I recognize the majority whip for the purpose of making that nomination.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor for me today to nominate for Sergeant at Arms, Mr. James Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Whip. At this time, I recognize the minority leader for the purpose of seconding a nomination.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the nomination of James Lee as Sergeant at Arms.
Thank you, Senator. Majority Whip, do you care to speak?
Mr. President, I'd ask that the nominations for Sergeant at Arms be closed and that the Secretary cast a unanimous vote to the Senate for James Lee as Sergeant at Arms.
Thank you, Mr. Whip. The Majority Whip has moved that nominations be closed and the Secretary cast a unanimous vote of the Senate for Mr. James Lee as Sergeant at Arms. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The nominations are closed. And I declare Mr. James Lee duly elected Sergeant at Arms. Mr. Lee, step down front. At this time, you can take a bow and resume your duties. That's not in the script, by the way. I recognize the Secretary for the purpose of reading a resolution. At this time, we will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 5 by Senator Miller of the 49th, a resolution to notify the House of Representatives that the Senate has convened and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the Senate that the Secretary of the Senate is hereby instructed to notify the House of Representatives that the Senate has convened in regular session and is now ready for the transaction of business. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is adopted. Bert, help me out over there. Get them started every now and then, all right? Okay, all right. The Secretary will be recognized for the reading of the resolution.
Senate Resolution 6 by Senator Miller of the 49th, a resolution to notify the Governor that the General Assembly has convened and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the General Assembly of Georgia that a committee of 14, 7 from the House of Representatives to be named by the Speaker and 7 from the Senate to be named by the President of the Senate, be appointed to notify His Excellency the Governor that the General Assembly has convened in regular session and is now ready for the transaction of business. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is adopted. Chair hears none, and therefore the resolution is adopted. Go back to 4. Okay. At this time, I will appoint the following senators as the Committee on Notification. Senators from the 4th, the 30th, the 41st, the 19th, the 17th, and the 15th are on the Committee of Notification, meaning you go to the governor's office and tell him we're in session. They will meet, if you will meet Secretary Cook up here, he will give you the specific instructions. I would like all members of the committee to meet at the front with Secretary Cook. 7. I recognize the Secretary of the Senate for reading of the resolution.
Senate Resolution 7 by Senator Miller of the 49th, a resolution relative to officials, employees, and committees in the Senate and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the Senate that the following provisions shall be in effect during the 2019-2020 biennium of the General Assembly unless and until otherwise provided for by resolution of the Senate. Part 1, Section 1-1, A, subject to the availability of funds, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Thank you. I recognize the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Resolution 7 be engrossed.
I recognize the Senator has moved for engrossment. I recognize the Minority Leader for a second. Is there any objection? No objection. Withdraw. Senate Resolution 7 is on for adoption. All those in favor will vote the yay switch. All those opposed will vote the nay switch. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machine. That wasn't in here either, guys. Okay. Senator from 41st, why do you rise?
SR 7 is not the complete rules of the Senate. It's only some salary issues, non-controversial issues. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This is not a motion to adopt. This is a motion to accept these non-controversial measures.
That is correct, sir. Thank you for the clarification. Everybody can vote yes without concern. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 53 and the nays are 2. The resolution receiving the requisite number of votes is thereby adopted. Someone check the senator from the 55th and what else? Who else? No. Check their machines. Excuse me, that was 35th. Stand by. We got a little technical error coming up here. We're going to work through it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your indulgence. We are printing. We'll go ahead and read it. We're going to recognize the Secretary for reading of a resolution.
Senate Resolution 4 by Senator Miller of 49th and others, a resolution adopting the rules of the Senate and for other purposes. A resolution adopting the rules of the Senate and for other purposes. Be it resolved by the Senate that the rules of the Senate in effect at the adjournment of the 2018 regular session of the General Assembly are hereby adopted as the rules of the Senate for the 2019-2020 biennium of the General Assembly unless and until otherwise provided by resolution of the Senate with the following amendments. Section 1, the rules of the Senate are amended by revising Part 2 of Section 1 by adding a new rule to read as follows. 1-2.5 Senate offices, A, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, thank you again for your indulgence. We're going to stand at recess for 5 minutes. Please do not leave the chamber. We will, just as quickly as we can get this document in here, we will be voting, and we want you all to be present. Every senator has a voice, and every voice deserves to be heard. But we're going to need you here. So we're going to stand in adjournment for 5 minutes, recess, until 11:25. 11:25. Thank you very much. Senators, if you will kindly take your seats, we will return to our agenda momentarily. Kindly take your seats. Okay, is he ready? You ready? No. Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I would take this moment to call the chamber to order. Please cease all audible conversation and take your seats. Please cease all audible conversation and take your seats. I recognize the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Resolution 4 be engrossed.
The majority leader has moved for engrossment, and the minority leader has objected, and that's a great surprise to me, isn't it, you folks? Yeah, right. Would the majority leader like to speak to his motion? He declines. Would the minority leader like to speak to his objection? I would. How did I know? Come on down. The minority leader has graciously agreed to shorten his allotted time from the requisite 10 minutes to 2, and we're very grateful for that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I rise to ask you to really consider whether or not we need to engross these bills, this rules. Often we engross bills to limit debate because of time constraints. Sometimes we do it for political purposes. And today, I feel, is one of those times. And it's not in the best interest to transparency or the public. This is not a bill that has traveled through a committee or been here for weeks that we've been able to observe. I was given a copy yesterday about noon of the rules. There have been slight changes to them since I was given them. They were not printed. They were not on our desk today. I requested off on the side that maybe we put it off till tomorrow so we could read and study it. But certainly, these are elements that we will have to live with for the next 2 years. It will take 2/3 of our body to change them at any time over the next 2 years. We want to make sure they're right. There are slight changes that I might want to make or that you might want to make that we won't be able to discuss today. And listen, this is the most important document we will pass this session, and we should get it right, even if it takes a little time. Whether or not we engross a bill through the entire session, or we only save engrossment for the last few weeks, whether or not we allow 2/3 of a committee to be able to bring a bill out that's sent to a committee if the chair is trying to sit on it. Those are just a few of the issues that we maybe should discuss. There are many. This is a very, very important matter. And quite frankly, you know, in the time it took to get a Diet Coke, that's how long that bill's been on the desk, and I haven't even seen it since it was revised and printed this morning. I ask you to vote against engrossment. I am working up a couple amendments, should you give me a chance. And I believe that many members are very concerned about this fact. It's also a precedent during the session that we should only do this when absolutely necessary to get to the business of the people. And we have time here today, or we could postpone this measure till tomorrow and have plenty of time to work on it. We have no other bills this week. We have time to get the rules right. Mr. President, I did say I would rush through it. Many of you know these complex issues. You know the importance that we get these rules correct, and you know that a fair debate on aspects of it would only be in the best interest of the public. I'll yield the well, but I urge all of you to vote against engrossment so we can hone or improve these bills. If not, even if it's engrossed, you should put it off till tomorrow so people have a chance to read the bills before our governing document for the next 2 years is enacted.
Senator, we have a question. Senator from 45th, recognized for a question.
Thank you. Would the Minority Leader please yield? Is it not true, Mr. Minority Leader, that perhaps your party may have reservations about the rules, but is it not true that also the majority party may have reservations about the rules and would wish to change some of the rules, and that we are trying to work in a bipartisan fashion to be able to make this body perform and be efficient and to work better together? Is that not true?
Appreciate those comments very much. There are people on both parties that would like to work on these issues, make improvements, you know, and if we could put it off. You know, there are concerns about the definition of environs, which is in the last Senate rule, and how far we're going to go to use of police forces as a Senate body to control things in this Capitol. So there are little things that need to be explained or changed to be comfortable with today. I ask for you all to support myself and the senator from the 45th in not engrossing this measure today.
Thank you, Senator. I recognize the Majority Leader. Any comment on the rules, Mr. Majority Leader?
Mr. President, I've asked for the Senate Resolution 4 to be engrossed. I think that's the position we find ourselves right now.
Senator has called for engrossment. There is objection. I have the Senator from the 26th.
President, parliamentary inquiry. Section 17 of Senate Resolution 4. Is it my understanding that if I object to any of the senators in this room on a bill or anything else, and I vehemently object, then it is determined by the majority party that you can bring Capitol Police to drag me out of the Senate.
The gentleman from the 26th, we are commenting on the motion to engross rather than the explanation of the individual rules. However, I will indulge you on that question. The Senate environs would be defined as the area within the chamber, the area adjacent to the chamber, the areas that would prohibit or impede the Senate from conducting their business. The third floor on each end would not be included in environs. The second floor would not be included in environs. The third would not be included in environs, nor would the fourth floor be included in environs. However, the gallery would be included in environs. Does that help address your question?
Part of it. May I ask another?
I'm not sure that I should be debating the merits of the bill. In fact, I know I shouldn't. I was trying to indulge you and give you a quick answer.
Well,
I think that we would call upon the majority leader to review the resolution, and if there are any further questions after that, then we will move forward. Senator from the 26th, would you be satisfied with that answer?
I'm not agreeable with it because it seems as though we are going to an authoritarian type of government.
Well, that is certainly not the intent. As I stated earlier, every senator has a voice, and every voice deserves to be heard. And we will stay here until we get resolution. Senator from the 41st, you are recognized for comment.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
This is only a motion on the engrossment. There will be, and I have two parliamentary inquiries. One, there will still be a presentation on the rules changes. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. This is only on the motion for engrossment. The senator from the 26th has a very valid question. It's not the appropriate time for that question. I was attempting to oblige him in that answer, but this is on the motion for engrossment. This is not on the merit of the bill.
Parliamentary inquiry follow-up.
State your inquiry.
When we have a conference committee report, is it not true that that conference committee report has to sit on the desk for 2 hours unless changed? And is this not?
Sir, you accurately state the Senate rules. That's correct.
Is it not true that our Senate rules are also very important and at least important in most conference committee reports? We should take proper time to deliberate on these issues, Mr. President.
The senator from the 41st is a wise gentleman. He knows of what he speaks. Any other senator wish to speak? Seeing none. Recognizing the senator from the 45th.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that if you don't agree with the rules, that the proper method would be to not engross these rules and to also give us time to delay it so that we could have at least one day to look at these rules, and if we wanted to make changes, we could make the correct decision? Is that not true?
The senator knows of what she speaks, and as the senator from the 41st, she's a wise and knowledgeable legislator, and makes a very strong statement. We're ready to vote on the motion of engrossment. So the motion of engrossment is about to be voted on. Mr. Secretary, if you unlock the machines. The senator from the 36th, the beautiful city of Decatur, is recognized. DeKalb County, rather.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that in the 32 years that I've served, and certainly in the 12 years that I've served in the Senate, we've never had rules put on the desk with an engrossment recommendation that were on the desk for less than 5 minutes? Isn't it true this is unprecedented in the history of this Senate?
That may well be the case, and you certainly would have accurate recall, I'm sure. On the motion for engrossment, the yeas are 33, the nays are 22. The motion for engrossment has passed. Mr. Secretary. I'd like to recognize the majority leader to speak to the bill. Resolution, rather.
Good morning. This is started off well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the sections here in the resolution. I'm sure just based off of what I've heard, there may be a couple of questions at the end. So let me go through it real quick, and then we'll answer the questions as they come up. Section 1 in there is extremely touchy, I know. It deals with codifying some offices that we've always maintained in that traditional space. So that's Section 1 of the proposed rules. Sections 2 is a little bit bigger. It's the ethics piece of it. It's a modification of the way we've been doing ethics, and the intent behind that is to provide more transparency, to provide more clarity, and to create some efficiencies that weren't done there before. There's a new HR person now with the Senate, and one of the things, the biggest part of this is the Ethics Committee can appoint a committee on ethics that can go and go deeper into situations like, frankly, came up last year. So I'm going to go through the Section 2 in a little bit more detail. The first change is in 1-4.5, and it describes the reporting of a violation of the special treatment clause, and it says it would be reported to the Secretary of Senate. In 1-4.7, subsection D, it cleans up the language. It's basically all that was covered is some language cleanup in there. Subsection E on that same section there discusses how complaints are reported to, and that language is then reiterated in 1-4.8 under subsection D. In 1-4.9, again, it has more defining language because there were some ambiguities in there before, and this is designed to clarify. In 1-4.10, that's when we start talking about the Committee on Ethics. It's an extension of the Ethics Committee. Subsection B describes when the committee can meet. Subsection C describes what the duties are of the committee and what they are authorized to perform. Subsection D lists the membership and the quorum requirements. If you go into 1-4.11, it talks about the complaint filing process and the actions taken after a complaint is filed. Then we go into Section 3. The only real change on here is the Committee on Assignments is authorized to meet when you're out of session. There's a couple of committees that you're going to see this on that have historically met after sine die before you reconvene the next time. This is cleaning up that language in that. You're going to see that same thing coming up again in just a minute under Section 4, because that same thing applies to the Committee on Administrative Affairs. In Section 5, there are committees that we have that are required by code section to meet while we're out of session. I think retirement would be one that comes to mind real quick, and this authorizes them to meet when we're not in session. Section 6 applies during the last 5 days of the session. Before now, our rules, the Senate rules, did not have the ability to amend any of the bills coming before them, and sometimes good legislation was getting caught in the time lag in the last 5 days. So this applies to the last 5 calendar days of the session only, and it allows the Rules Committee to amend bills before them rather than just having the ability to send them back to committee. Section 7 gives us, I know this is tough here, the authority to negotiate crossover day with the House. What it allows us to do is to take it back as early as day 25. Y'all are authorizing us to do that. If the House agrees to it, and it would be anywhere in that range from 25 to 30. Last few times we've been at 28. But all this is doing is saying if the House will agree to go to day 25, y'all are authorizing us to make that deal with them. Section 10. There was some uncertainty surrounding the term Senate delegation. This clarifies and puts it in line with the same verbiage that's in the local legislation piece of our rules. That basically a majority of the delegation, and a delegation member is anybody who is in part or whole in any of the the counties that are being discussed. And this just puts everything, lines everything up. Section 12, again, language cleanup. Section 13 takes what has been our traditional practices and codifies. Section 15, again, goes into what has been long-standing practice and putting it in the rules. So if I could figure out how to get some more space on the desk here. So within the last ones I was just talking about, 13, for example, what the rules say is voice vote, and then we stand up here and we say rise, stand, and be counted. That's not a voice vote. It is a division of the Senate. So just calling it what it really is. And 15, if you're entering the Senate chamber, you'll be in appropriate attire. It's, again, we've all had those rules in place for a long time. This is just codifying them. So, seeing that there are no questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the well. It was worth the effort.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. I recognize you have a question, you'd like to speak.
Okay.
I recognize the Senator for the 45th for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader, is it not true that just this morning the Majority Caucus changed on page 14 the membership of the Judiciary Committee and decreased it from 12 to 10? And I was just wondering if the minority party was apprised of this morning, because it must have been just maybe an hour or two ago that they were apprised. Were they in agreement with it?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate you asking that. In an effort to try to be as transparent as we can with the minority party, I have talked with the minority leader and gave him a probability that that was going to happen yesterday, so that to try not to surprise him with anything that's coming up. So yes, he knew about it by yesterday.
So would you further yield?
I will yield.
So the minority party knew about it, but the majority party didn't?
Senator, I don't believe that's accurate, because when we met last week, we discussed that during our meeting last week.
Okay.
The potential of that happening.
Would you further yield?
I will yield.
Would you please explain, and I appreciate the Senator Ethics Chairman from Bainbridge and the diligence, and also Mr. Cook, how much work was done on changing the ethics of the Senate. But my question is about the procedures on the issue of sexual harassment. I know that we changed the reporting, but I think it's very important for transparency that people understand that there's more than one mechanism. Could you explain that this is an internal complaint system, but you also have that avenue of going to the civil court? Could you please explain that process and how a person might make a decision? Because there's lots of people watching on television, on the computers, on live stream, and I think it's very important that we're transparent about how you do this. Could you explain that?
Right. Thank you. And I'm not sure that I can explain it a whole lot better than what you just did by explaining that there are multiple avenues that a person can make a complaint. They can do it internally through the system, which is spelled out under that subsection here in the proposed rules change, or they can go external to the chamber and take it into the court system. So this does not prohibit or define one way or another. It's just the avenue that we can control within our chamber. It's a process to kind of put some teeth into what needed a little bit more teeth put into it, but it doesn't prohibit anybody from taking other avenues to proceed on something that they feel that they've been harassed or whatever on that. Thank you for asking that question, though.
Recognize the senator from the 36th.
Thank you. Does the senator yield?
Senator yields.
I have two or three questions, if you will indulge me. Following up on that last point about the rewrites to the ethics language, on page 8, preliminary inquiry, lines 265 through 270.
Okay.
What this language does is it changes the standard that has to be met in order for the committee to take up a complaint. And it states that the committee has determined that substantial credible evidence exists, which provides substantial cause. That's a much higher standard than the original language, which reads that until the committee has determined that reasonable grounds exist to believe that there's been a violation, then an act within the jurisdiction of the committee. Why would we make it harder? Why would we raise the bar for a complaint to be investigated and create this very high standard of substantial, credible evidence when that's often difficult to determine until you conduct the investigation? But it will stand in the way of investigations being done, in my opinion. Isn't that the case? Reasonable grounds is a much lower bar to reach than substantial credible evidence, which provides substantial cause. What was the thinking behind changing this language to make it harder to get a sexual harassment complaint before the committee?
And I appreciate you asking that question, and I was really glad to see you here today, by the way.
I'm always happy to see you.
And it doesn't prevent anybody from filing the complaint. All that section does right there is keep it confidential until you meet that higher standard. It's a confidentiality of the case until that higher standard is met, and that's when it changes. But you can file the complaint and it can proceed. It's just for all the parties involved in that. It's the complaint, see on 266, such a complaint shall remain confidential until the committee has determined.
But on lines 270, 271, the language is shifted that if the committee determines that reasonable cause to believe that such violation does not exist, now it's substantial cause. So it's concerning that, and again, this is a wonderful example of why these rules need to be fly-specced and not have them on our desks 5 minutes before in their most recent amended form, is because these have a far-reaching impact on the matters that will possibly be before the Senate body.
I agree that the rules are important, or we wouldn't have them. You know, I think there are some, like budget, which is probably, in the grand scheme of things, a little bigger priority for us. But if I could address 271, 272 real quick, it takes it from you can't dismiss the case based off reasonable now. Now it has to be substantial. So you can't, what is saying on that one is you've raised the standard of what you can do to dismiss one. You're actually making it, you're making it easier for the person making the complaint, or I wouldn't say easier, more fair. It's more strict.
Well, it says that if the committee determines that substantial cause does not exist, the complaint shall be dismissed. It's troubling, and again, many of us would like a lawyer at our side to get a true reading of what could be the impact of these rule changes. And finally, and I know other people may have questions, I would like to pursue one other line of thought, and that is the question of crossover day.
Mm-hmm.
There used to not exist a crossover day. How many people in this chamber, I would ask, have had their bill caught up and not get past one chamber to the other chamber on crossover day? It's a very clever way to bottle up legislation and never let it get a chance to be voted on the floor in both chambers. it's now the 33rd day. I believe that the Republicans have changed it. I believe the Republicans have changed crossover day at least twice since you took over.
It's the 28th day? Is that what you were meaning?
Yeah, it's crossover day, moving
Right.
the time of what
Right.
that means to everybody in the sound of my voice. If you haven't figured it out yet, when you have a bill, your bill will get trapped and not make it because that 28th day slams down on you. Yeah, from 33 to 28 to 25, it's very radical, and it's authoritarian, and it limits the ability of us to represent our issues and our constituents because it makes much narrower the tiny little needle, eye of the needle that we have to thread to get a bill passed down here. And that impacts people in the majority party and the minority party. So I would love to hear the justification for moving that, for us passing in these rules and authorization for the leadership to reduce crossover day, reduce the number of days that we have to get a bill out of a chamber.
Senator
It's
from the
going to affect
36th.
everybody in here.
Senator from the 36th.
Yes, sir.
At the risk of appearing to be interrupting you and
No, I'm
cutting you
finished.
off, and I certainly don't mean to be, in deference and consideration to the minority party and the majority party, if you could be a little more concise and direct, we can move this along. But
Right.
if
Thank you.
we've got to move this along.
Thank you. And that's my final question, is to address the thinking behind narrowing that window by authorizing the leadership to negotiate with the House on reducing the crossover day to a lesser number. Thank you.
Okay. The thought process is to help the Senate body, because you know as well as I do in your time here, probably, I'll say it differently, you know better than I do because of your wealth of experience here, that there are often times that the other chamber is working on their own stuff so close to crossover, up to that crossover line to get it across, that they're not taking any of our legislation up. So in an effort to gain a few more days, that we can get legislation that has passed out of our chamber and had gone to the House, it helps them speed up hearing some of our legislation. That's the thought process behind it. It was intended to have more of our bills heard here because that we typically get them done and get over there at a little bit different time because there's a third less of us here. So,
Mr. Majority Leader, I'd ask the same thing of you, and I ask of the senator from the 36th.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Recognize the senator. If there are no more questions, I'll recognize the senator from the 22nd to speak to. You have a question, or
Then I yield the
He's
well.
got a
Then
question. He's got a question, Mr. Leader.
Thank you. Would the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Thank you. I was looking on page 7, which goes back to, I believe, what the senator from the 45th was also asking, and that would be line 203 on page 7.
Okay.
So the question is there any language in the bill that would tell a person that they have the opportunity to go to an outside agency? So we give the 2 years here, which is, but the EEOC would only give 180 days. And so the concern is there any concern that would give a person a false sense of security that they could actually wait 2 years before bringing a complaint, not understanding that outside they would only have 180 days? Is there any language that would explain that to them? Do you understand?
No, I don't understand what you just said. What I understand is with the rules of the stuff that we can control here, that it's a 2-year period that they have in which to report. That we don't have a clause in here or statement in here saying this is not the only recourse. There are other avenues that you can pursue, but you know that would be with any legal action that we take up.
And would the gentleman further yield for one further question?
I will.
Looking at page 18, line 610. What is the, how are we defining like Senate lobby? How are we defining that particular area? And is there any concern that might be overbreadth as far as the president's powers are concerned?
Am I concerned that it would be? No, I'm not. Like the pro tem mentioned earlier, it's the area immediately in this room to the sides or out there in those environments that actions could disrupt the activities going on here in the chamber. So, and he even pointed out both the north and the south wing and the other floors are not covered by that. It's right here in these environs.
But also out, would it also be outside? Okay.
Right there outside the environs, right outside the chamber there. We would typically call that the rope.
Correct. Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions, Mr. President.
Thank you.
No further questions. Senator, recognize the senator
Thank you,
from
Mr. President. I yield the
41st
well.
to close. You want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I rise to, again, tell you that this is an important issue. We should take time, we should deliberate, we should make sure we know what we're doing and doing it right. And mainly to the people in the audience and the galleries and the families who are here, I want you to know this is not like D.C. We're not doing this as some partisan thing from one side to the other. We have legitimate concerns that we don't understand everything in these rules. We have some legitimate concerns that we just got them really this morning and have had only a few minutes to go over them. You know, this is something that's very important to citizens of Georgia. He mentioned the budget. How we vote on the budget, how we act and handle it are laid out in these rules. You know, and if we want to amend these rules later, it takes a 2/3 vote. So I just wanted you all to know this is not gamesmanship. This is seriously that we got together this morning and looked over some rules that weren't actually totally finished this day. We had so many questions amongst us, so many things that we either didn't understand or had some minor problems with, that quite frankly, I think that if we got with the majority leader and we got with the pro tem, could be worked on. At least clarity on some of the issues would be brought forth and we'd be of either the same mind or at least agree to disagree. And then some things, maybe I could, or we could convince the other side that there is some improvements that could be made. By engrossing and then by moving forward in this fashion, we don't have those times. So most, if not all of my caucus are not going to support the rules today. But I did want you to know that it is not because we wouldn't move Georgia forward in any way we can with any participants of this chamber that we can, as long as we thought we were doing the right thing for all of Georgia and that things were being done in a way that we were included in the process to an extent that our constituents and the almost 200,000 people that live in each of our districts deserve. We ask you to respect them, respect the many people in Georgia that we represent, vote the rules down. We can come back tomorrow and have them reintroduced by a separate resolution, or a motion can be made for reconsideration after they're voted down. I will second that motion for reconsideration, and we can bring them back tomorrow after the deliberation and discussions have gone forward, and possibly resolutions can be come to. So I ask that you vote this down at this time, regretfully. Thank you.
Mr. Leader, I got a question for you. I'm sorry. From the senator from the 10th. Recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
I certainly yield to my vice chair.
Senator, I want to refer your attention to section 17. It says line 11 and 12. It appears that under these new rules, as it pertains to actions being taken about living into a certain area, originally it said that it could be cleared by the sergeant at arms. But sergeant at arms has been stricken and removed. From your opinion, does that, by removing sergeant at arms, isn't it true that that would create certain sensitivities, not just in this chamber, but outside this chamber, where potentially, instead of a comment from a sergeant at arms to clear the area, that law enforcement could now be used to clear
Certainly, Senator, and I understand the senator is very protective of every member of this body and wants to make sure that we're all treated fairly and equally. We do have concerns, and I appreciate Senator Tenth bringing this up. that why, I mean, if you're going to change who enforces rules that have been in place, and I've been in the chamber almost along the senator from the 4th. We got elected at the same time. I was out for 4 years. Rules have been in place for over 50 years. That some explanations need to be made on why it is being done, or otherwise it raises concerns on what are the intent and what will be the final product. And there are concerns that calling the state patrol or other law enforcement officials instead of the sergeant arms opens up certain issues on its own merit. And I appreciate you bringing that up, that we need to discuss.
Thank you, Senator.
I also, in that vein, want to just mention in response to that question, you know, we could maybe do more today, but we've got a swearing in. We know it's not intentional, but we've been in a position where I've had to ask people not to ask questions because there's a luncheon, there's a swearing in, there's the governor's thing at 2. You know, that's a bad posture to be in. In some ways, I feel it's unfair that we're even being in that posture, that by debating an issue, we're seen as bad guys. So again, I ask members of the Senate to not let anybody here be a bad guy, whether they vote for or against this. Not let anybody be a bad guy for debating it. And if you can, please find your way to vote no so we can work on it and we can all be good guys and improve these rules for the people of Georgia. I yield. If there's
Recognize the senator from 36 for a question.
If the gentleman yields, isn't it true that as a member of the minority caucus and you as the minority leader, we all have a deep and grave concern around the questions in the last part of the rules that make even more strict behaviors in and around the Senate chamber? We have had a member of our caucus, a seated senator elected here in Atlanta with a vast majority of her voters, put in handcuffs by the state patrol and taken out and put in a paddy wagon and taken down and booked at the jail and charged with misdemeanor charges, who was in the Capitol during a session. So please understand our deep and profound concern about any more efforts to restrict civil rights, freedom of assembly, and freedom of expression in these Senate rules when that has happened when we were last in session here in late fall. We have deep concerns, grave concerns about that matter, and that troubled us as much as anything else about these rules.
Thank you, Senator. I deeply appreciate you bringing that forth, that many of my members have deep and legitimate concerns. It's very emotional and touchy subjects. You know, there have been tears in more than one of my members' eyes in concerns on how we treat people and where we're going as a state and a nation. So I ask that you respect that too in your deliberations. Thank you.
Senator he's thinking about yielding the well.
Is there one more?
Senator from the 44th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does the senator yield?
I yield. And
thank you very much. Just one quick question. Isn't it true that black people had to march with signs in the Capitol, out of the Capitol, to get voting rights for the 1965 voting rights to pass? And one of the former members of the General Assembly, Reverend Hosea Williams, was beaten on the Edmund Pettus Bridge along with Congressman John Lewis to get the right. So when we march, when we go out in the streets and march, we have signs that say, respect me, that say, I am a man. When Dr. King was killed in Memphis, Tennessee, the sign said, I am a man, for the garbage workers. So isn't it true that we should look at these rules and not try to stop people from coming to the Capitol and feel unwanted to come to the Capitol to voice their opinion? The people that we represent, the people that sent us here.
Thank you, Senator. And I do appreciate that. You know, it's easy from some of our perspectives to not be empathetic or understand the complexities that different members face. You know, women and minorities, African Americans. We now have a sheikh here who brings a Bangladesh minority into the chamber. People have suffered in many ways discrimination. it's hard to understand. You know, my father was a union leader, struck with sanitation workers, went through a lot. I saw a lot growing up, but I've seen a lot more growing up and in the years ahead. There's one statue on this Capitol grounds that are of African-American legislators that were booted out of this Capitol because they were black after Reconstruction. Julian Bond, a black state representative, was booted out of the chamber because he voiced his opinion on an important social issue. You know, this is not 100 years ago. In mine and the senator from the 4th term, and Senator Lucas, who probably could recount some things way before me, and senator from the 36th, in our time, the first African-American woman in the history of the state, Nadine Thomas, came to serve in this chamber in 1992. You know, that's about the majority of the Democrat caucus. You know, things have changed, but they haven't changed holistically, haven't changed everywhere, and certainly we cannot forget that there is much more changing that needs to be done, and that those safeguards for minority populations must be fought for and protected every day by each and every one of us, or we will not have those safeguards anymore. Appreciate your dedication and your fight for the community and our public good. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize, no further questions. Recognize the senator from the 51st.
Mr. President, I move for the previous question.
The senator has moved to the previous question. The senator from the 51st has moved to the previous question. Is there objection? Recognize the senator from the 45th.
Inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President Pro Tem, is it not appropriate that we're asking for further debate on a very serious topic of rules that will govern us for the next 2 years? The minority party has asked for more time. I know there are buttons on, lights on, where people would like to speak. And essentially what you're saying is your opinion doesn't matter, that these people need to be heard. I have mine on also, and I think that we should be heard. I don't think this is a good way to start out a 2-year term. Is that not true?
Senator has great knowledge of what she speaks. Senator from the 51st has moved to the previous question. All those in favor will vote the yay switch. All those opposed will vote the nay switch. Secretary, unlock the machines. Senator from the 41st is seeking recognition. Mr.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
What is your inquiry?
The motion is to stop debate. A green would end debate and we would vote on the rules. A red would not mean that we close debate, and those lights could be answered and we could constructively work on this issue. Is that correct?
Thank you for your instructive comments. At this time, I would take a moment to recognize Mr. Thomas Shinazuka, the Consulate General of Japan. Can we give him a warm Senate welcome? On the motion for moving to the previous question, the yeas are 33, the nays are 22. The motion has passed. We will move on to the passage of the resolution. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machines. All those in favor will vote yea, green switch. All those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, unlock the machines. I will take another point of personal privilege to recognize former Senator Seth Harp on the floor today. And further, I'd like to thank all those, as I mentioned earlier, mothers, fathers, cousins, aunts, uncles, friends, sisters, brothers, for being here in support of your senators. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 33, the nays are 21. This resolution, having received the requisite number of yea votes, is therefore adopted. During this interim, we're waiting for the joint resolution to arrive from the House. Anyone that would like a photograph with Justice Bethel, he'd be happy to meet you here on the steps. So if we could move to get that done during this interim, it'd be very, very nice. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 19th. Please do. Senators, please, 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 quietly, and not in the center aisle.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I want to point you to your desk. Many of you have a red bag, as you have probably already had time this morning to go through it. I want to point out a few important things for today's inaugural events and the inaugural events on Thursday, so please listen to me if you will. You'll see these blue wristbands in your bag. If you don't have one of these blue wristbands on, you will not be allowed to get on the bus or go to the luncheon. These are for you and your families or whoever you disperse them to. There should be 4 per senator. Please put these on. The buses will leave from Capitol Avenue between 12:30 and 12:45. That's in a couple of minutes. So be ready, 12:30, 12:45. Make sure you have your wristband. Everyone else can have the paper ticket. If you have any other questions about the gala events on Thursday, please feel free to grab me or Senator Strickland in the anterooms. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Doorkeeper, please close the door. Senators, please keep your voices as muffled as possible during this interim. Senators, let me remind you, we are waiting on the joint resolution from the House, and we will take immediate action upon its arrival. What's going on with it? Is this just, you think they're just
Hello?
May I have your attention, please, senators? Senators, please keep. Mr. Dorman, if you'll close the door, please. It'll be very helpful to us. Can we keep our conversation to a very minimum in a very soft voice? Any additional senators or family members who would like to get a photograph with Justice Bethel, if you'll come over to the corner over here, we'll take care of that real quickly. Thank you. We're dispensing with that while we wait on the joint resolution from the House. As once again, we're waiting on the House, but that's just the way it is. Senators, by way of update, the House has voted and the resolution has been transmitted. We are in the process of receiving it, so hopefully momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, last call for photographs with Justice Bethel. Almost gave him a promotion there. Last call for photographs with Justice Bethel. Senator from the 19th, if you would approach. Senator from the 19th. At this time, I'd like to call the Senate to order. If all senators would kindly take your desk, take your seat, and cease all audible conversation. Senators, please take your seat and cease all audible conversation. We have a couple of senators finished up with photographs. Let's take care of that real quickly. And we are about to come out of recess. Senators, take your seat. We're ready to read a resolution. Ready to read a resolution.
House Resolution 13 by Representative Burns of the 159th, a resolution calling a joint session of the House of Representatives and Senate for the purpose of the inauguration of the governor, the lieutenant governor, and other executive constitutional officers of the state of Georgia, and for other purposes.
Call upon the majority leader for a motion. To speak to the resolution, I beg your pardon. Could I call upon the senator from the 19th to explain that resolution? Okay, fine.
Members of the Senate, this one should take a little less conversation than the last time I was up here. What this resolution does is call for a joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate for the purpose of inauguration of the governor, lieutenant governor, and other executive constitutional officers of the state of Georgia. Subject to your questions? Then I yield the well. Thank you.
Senator from the 19th, would you like to speak to the resolution? Any clarification on schedule or et cetera that you might want to repeat from earlier today?
The only thing I'd like to, yes, Mr. President, one thing, yeah. I want to make sure that the members know that our families are sitting separately than the members today. The members will process in, so when you get to the Georgia Tech campus, please look for the practice gymnasium. The members will proceed in there. Our families are welcome to sit in any of the general seating.
Thank you, Senator. Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is adopted. The Secretary will read a resolution.
House Resolution 14.
For the purposes of the inaugural, the escort committee for the governor-elect will be the senator from the 30th, senator from the 51st, 18th, 20th, 50th, 53rd, 4th, 15th, 41st, and 46th. If there are any senators who have questions about that, please approach on the side over here. Thank you very much. Secretary, read a resolution.
House Resolution 14 by Representative Burns of the 159th, a resolution calling a joint session of the House of Representatives and the Senate for the purpose of hearing a message from the governor, inviting the justices of the Supreme Court and the judges of the Court of Appeals to be present at the joint session and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Is there objection? Hearing none, resolution passes. Secretary, read a resolution and a message.
The Senate has received a message from the House. House Resolution 10 by Representative Burns of the 159th, a resolution to notify the Senate that the House of Representatives has convened and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
If there are no further questions, I will call upon the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand in recess until the convening of the joint session of the General Assembly for the purpose of inaugurating the governor, and that upon dissolution of that joint session, the Senate stand adjourned until Tuesday, January 15th at 10 a.m.
Is there objection? Hearing no objection, the resolution is adopted. Stand by. We have one final motion. We stand adjourned.